Hello and welcome back to Reapers. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have a discussion slash debate slash possibly an argument. We'll see how it goes. We've got all of our favourite characters in here and you'll be hearing from them if they want to talk. So the way it's going to work, and I wanted to do this for effing years by the way, but it's so hard to get people to talk, it's unreal. But we're going to try it. The way Cap's going to think of something to say, which I've thought of, and I'm going to make that argument and then, or statement, an opinion, and then the rest of the guys are going to talk about it, debate it, and see if anything cool comes out of it. Probably not, but what the hell, let's go. So, my argument... No, oh yeah, and that's the there's one rule, and that is that Cap is always right. If you're on the mic, no mic hogging, although Bloodknock is not here, so that shouldn't be a problem. No droning on, or I'll have to cut you out. Otherwise, we're good. My argument is that I was thinking the other day, about the EuroFighter Typhoon, everyone knows, everyone's favourite jet, and how cool it is as a fighter, interceptor, scrambling QRA, that kind of cool stuff. And I was thinking, okay, cool, well, what did it replace? What was its predecessor? You know, was it like something cool like the F-15 or F-16 or F-4 Phantom? You know, what cool fighter jet did it replace?
Tornado.
Yeah,
ADP.
So you're already breaking the rules. Cap says his things, and then you guys come in. Now you put me off now. Yeah. So what did it replace? And Cap can't think of a single, really, something that we can put quote unquote a fighter plane, fighter interceptor until the 50s when we've got the the F3 Lightning. That's the last thing I think it had. Then we had a 50-year gap. Now I've been racking my brain trying to think why haven't we had a standalone proper dedicated fighter or a decent fighter, and I think it's because in the early 80s when the Yanks invaded England and put all of their Cold War bases up, like RAF Lakenheath, where we've still got like 110 F-15s there. Someone correct me.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I love going down there, by the way. And I think, and then England just said, look, bollocks to this, we're not paying money to have a proper fighter, because the Yanks will do it for us. That's my theory. Not quite finished yet. We will bring up the existence of the Tornado, obviously. Cap's argument is that it's not a fighter in any way, shape or form, was never designed to be a fighter, but we'll go over that. And I think there was the TRS-2, someone will have to correct me on that, dedicated Mach 2.5, I think, fighter interceptor that we were supposed to have, and it obviously never came into fruition. We'll probably come to that. So, that's my argument. What do you guys think about that?
You're right.
Rubbish.
Yeah, no, totally.
You're right, Cap.
Come on, Artie. Hit me, Auntie.
No, Cap's
the
right.
Lightning was our all-weather interceptor, but it had very limited armament, and yeah, it could probably even beat the F-15 Strike Eagle climb rate.
Wow.
Very easy. Well, they put a Lightning on its arse and it took off vertically. So that's how powerful it was. One guy said, "Yeah, I took off from the runway and then I hit 30,000 feet and thought I better take the gear up." That's how fast it was. That's one of the pilots. Is some very good. But after the Lightning, we bought the Phantom.
Oh, did we?
America. Yeah, we had lots and lots of Phantoms. They were based at Coningsby. I'm sure somebody will ratify that.
Wow.
Yep.
I saw one in the hangar at Coningsby with holes down its wings from front to back.
Wow. When did we have the F4s then? And why don't I remember it?
It would be 70s. We had the F4 Phantoms.
Right. Interesting.
And I was at Coningsby, saw this Phantom with holes all the way down its wings, big holes.
Why was that?
And we said, what would happen? And they were using the wrecks on the wash to do ground firing, rockets and bombs, and they had a Gatling gun in the F4 Phantom built into the nose. And what this Phantom had done, he'd gone in with his wingman. He'd gone down, fired at the wreck, pulled up. His wingman fired at the wreck and pulled up, but his wingman's bullets ricocheted off the wreck and flowed through his wing.
Okay, yeah.
So he managed to get back to Coningsby after losing all the fuel in that wing because there were so many holes. The self-filling fuel tanks weren't going to cope with that. He got back all right and landed it. But then after the Phantom, the Tornado replaced the Phantom.
I could tell you the reason why England got out of the fighter business.
Yep.
It's called they did not have the technology to refine the absolute metals to keep that go into jet engines.
That's rubbish.
I think it's rubbish, but I don't know.
Mr.
I mean,
Yamin,
You'll find that the MiG-15 had a Rolls-Royce engine in it.
if I may.
Yeah.
So, if I may, if you look at it from a strategic point of view, the UK is the westernmost nation that's part of NATO, right? So why would they need frontline fighters? Why not have the Yanks base their fighters there to go to the frontline nations on the NATO side? You know, your West Germany, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Why would
That's
you need to
actually a
spend
good
money
point.
on fighters?
and you also remember the UK coming out of World War II was virtually on the amounts of bankruptcy.
Mm.
Yeah, they had to. When the war ended, they actually had to introduce heavier rationing than during the war.
Roger that, guys, but I'm talking from 50 to the millennium, so 1950. I'm talking 50 years between 1950 to the millennium, is what I'm saying. It's 50 years when we weren't in. Yeah.
So what
I
I'm
think
Hello.
TSR-2, as you mentioned, was supposed to be a supersonic bomber.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, really?
what it was designed for,
Sonic
but
reconnaissance.
it was cancelled due to cost.
Mm.
The costs were escalating, but a lot of the technology from the TSR-2 found its way into a lot of modern-day aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Like
and
the
then
Admiral
had-
Vulcan.
the
Yes,
Vulcan,
but also
no,
the-
no,
TSR.
the TSR-2. I'm talking about modern-day stuff. The
Mm.
TSR-2 was light years ahead of
But also the issue with
present-day technology.
Sorry. Now, the
isn't that why they made the F-35?
No, F-35 is a bit different. The issue with the TSR-2 was the fact that the Americans wanted to build F-111 and sell it to the Australians, from which obviously they did, as we discovered later on in the future. But also, we were going to sell our TSR-2 to the Australians, and it was going to be better than the F-111. It was going to be a supersonic, low-level. Whole politics thing was America was going to recall their war debts, and so the Labour
Oh,
government
so it
went-
is like the F-35.
and the Labour government said, "We can't afford this. We've got to stop." And so, from the millennium to the 2000s, the majority of the money after that, all the development of the aircraft kind of slowed down and stopped. There wasn't a funding in which to be able to the government to fund like 3 or 4 pilot projects and get prototypes of the aircraft, and then pick the best one. So the whole issue with we don't have aircraft from a lot of aircraft from the 50s to the present day that we built all by ourselves is simply the fact that we don't have the money, and the government weren't willing to invest that money into the programs to be able to get a whole host of aircraft.
The
Well, why
Cold-
spend
the
all those
Cold War-
dollars? You know, why spend all those dollars and cents on trying to develop a plane, or in this case, British pounds, when you've got a powerful ally that already has perfectly good fighters who's willing to make them available to you? Why go through all that development cost? Why not just buy them from them?
Exactly. As they started to make it bigger and better, the British eventually went, well, it's cheap for us now, obviously, to buy from other aircraft, and obviously we do collaborations. So the Panavia Tornado, the Eurofighter, all sort of stuff for collaboration with different countries, because it's cheaper to get more money in the pot. Than it's just
F-16 was in that pot too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see, before the war, we had an empire. We had a massive empire. So Britain was very rich because of the money flowing in from the empire. After World War II, the empire broke up. All the countries became independent. We were building a welfare system, and that's why we had no money until sort of late 50s, early 60s, when the austerity stopped. My parents tell me about this. So we have the welfare system in place now, which, I mean, come on, it is the envy of the world. Lots of people come here for treatment for free now. But that's the reason a lot of stuff was cancelled. The fact that we were just a little bitty country, and like you say, we're out here on the edge. We're not likely to get MiG-29s coming across the North Sea or Su-27s. They're just not going to come that far. So we just didn't need a frontline fighter. Now, the Tornado was primarily going to replace lots of little things and became like the fighter bomber. Then it became the F3, which was the fighter variant, which had all the big new missiles on it to go out over the North Sea and escort the bombers back. Now we've gone for the Typhoon with the Meteor missile, which beats the AMRAAM into the ground and makes the Phoenix look like a quivering little mouse.
Cool.
Calm down now. Calm down.
This is what gets
The
Auntie
Meteor.
hot.
Yeah, the Meteor is this huge new missile. You've got to have a look at the specs on that, guys.
We'll do a video on that.
Amazing.
Well,
The
Meteor
Typhoon is again, it's an all-round attack. It's not just a fighter; it's also a bomber and everything else. And it was designed not to be that stealthy because you don't need it in an aircraft like that.
Because you have allies with stealth flight.
Okay, guys. So
maneuverable.
we've got 5 minutes left.
Well, like,
I'll give you a second, Wolf. We've got 5 minutes left. I'm just going to take it a slightly different direction, just to wrap up for the viewers. Okay, we've discussed opinions on that. Now, what if in the 1950s the Americans went a different way? What if they had an ultra-conservative set of leaders, and they said, no, we're not spending money, we're not building F-15s and F-16s, and if we did, we're certainly not shipping them out to England and Europe. So we didn't have that cover from Uncle Sam. How do you think England would have responded? Do you think we would have gone full retard and developed our own F-15 and our own F-16 and our own whatever?
I think you'd probably be speaking Russian right about now.
That's what I would say.
well, okay, that is definitely one scenario that
is a good,
UK could be speaking Russian right now.
A more practical scenario, though.
I mean, that is pretty practical. Like, I mean, if you think about the situation in the 60s and the 50s, and even in the 80s, like, entire Cold War was basically... The only thing that was stopping the Russians was basically the American...
Yeah, right. It required the
arsenal.
U.S. to be up in their face with the arsenal. If they hadn't...
And the fact of the matter is...
conservative approach, USSR would have just taken over.
Yeah, and like pretty much all of Europe was just absolutely shit after World War II. Like, just totally destroyed. And the main reason that Western Europe was able to get back on its feet was pretty much entirely because of the U.S. like just lending a shitload of money.
Marshall Program. I think we're getting a little off track. Anyway, Wolf, you were saying.
Well, I think they would have just put bigger engines in the Buccaneer.
Yeah, logistically, it makes sense to bring other aircraft in from your allies. I'm not even sure if the UK even bought any F-15s. I could be wrong.
No,
Probably am. No? Okay. Well, there you go. They just rent out the air bases to the F-15s to the US. They have them bring in some money. They don't have to risk any of their pilots, hardly any of their infrastructure. All they needed to supply, I think, was fuel and some spare parts and shipping. That's it.
And
So, if I may, I'd like to suggest a scenario based on what happened in South Africa. Who's the one country in the world who will gladly give you all of their aircrafts if you're willing to haul out the money?
Russia.
French.
Hey, South Africa still flies Lightnings.
Yep, it's the British. We've got the Harrier.
So we could have bought MiG-29s, mate. Oh no, because it was a Cold War.
I was about to say
What I was going to say is you'd probably be flying Mirages, actually.
Why
Yo,
not?
France.
You buy them from the French.
Yeah, they do similar shit to everybody.
Hang on, guys. Hang on. Going against everything that you guys have said, including myself, all through the 1950 to 2000, the period that we're interested in. Like I argued, UK didn't really have a mainline fighter for X, Y, and Z reasons, but the French did. They had the Mirages, which were effectively fighters from the 50s all the way up to the 2000s. They constantly invested in modern fighters, and they had just the same protection as us. They had the Uncle Sam overlooking them, so they went for it. They had their frontline fighters, and
You know what? You'll be
France did go for it.
Got to be flying
France mainland. France is
Grippins.
part of the mainland.
Yeah, and France wasn't
But
part
yeah,
of NATO.
the deal that he was making is that whereas Britain didn't go for it, France went for it. They actually did try to build a mainline.
But there's two reasons for that. One, France had to protect their colonies. Two, they had an export markets. They exported Mirages all the way around the world. Mirage 3s, Mirage 4s, Mirage F1s.
Right. The exportation makes sense why they would make it.
Can I get it?
And I think the French were more reluctant to take American planes. They didn't want to become dependent on America for their combat aircraft.
Yeah, the difference between France and England after the war, France, the only part that got invaded by Germany was the northern part. Most of France's industrial base was in the southern lands. That along the Mediterranean, that was intact after the war. England, after the war, lost most of their colonies, and that's where they got their superpower rating. That's why they had the big navy to protect their colonies. When they lost their colonies due to independence or they couldn't afford to keep them under control anymore, that's when they lost their power. That's when they lost their economic base. France's economic base was somewhat intact after the war.
Good
I think the Brits would have collaborated with other countries and just came up with a frontline fighter.
I think France and England would have been leaders.
The Jaguar.
If the U.S. returned to its neutrality before the war, I think England and France would have taken the leadership roles in the NATO alliance.
Cap,
Yeah,
could I
France
hijack
wasn't
those?
part of it.
Competing with Russia may have been kind of hard.
I was about to. Well, I think we're about to finish. Is there anything else, Wolf? You want to?
I'd like to make one comment on that. You're
Go on, Jeff.
confusing, I think, ultra conservatives with the liberals. It's the ultra conservatives that boost the military power of the country, and it's the liberals who pull it back because they want the money for domestic programs.
Roger, I think.
Well,
what,
I think
what I was trying
it's
to
different
say.
terms for British and American.
Well,
right?
no, it may be the same. I mean, I didn't really mean
Left, right.
political. I was just meant to say conservative, as in they didn't send their planes
They are conservative with
abroad.
their money.
Is what I meant. But yeah, I didn't.
I understood what you
yeah,
meant.
Roger.
I understood
Wolf,
what you
am I good to wrap up, or do you want something, Wolf?
Sure. Just a quick hijack for a second. Imagine, if you will, that the UK had dumped a ton of money into the US fighter aircraft system, as well as the US, to develop something bigger than an F-15. Not expecting an answer, but just imagine if that had happened.
Why though?
Ooh, food for thought.
Well, the only reason why the F-15 came to fruition because they thought the F-25 was the super fighter of everything.
And it was really just a piece of shit.
Okay.
Yeah, the Foxback could go Mach 2.9.
Okay, chaps. We'll save that. We'll save that till next time. Our time is up. Thank you for that, everyone. And just to say, our disclaimer as usual: we are not military experts. We are not Bill Gunston. We are just enthusiasts. So feel free to argue with us and bring up your own responses in the chat. Thank you very much.